Get to the ghost part.
Great. There we go.
This is what Amelia's been waiting for.
Yes.
And, I've spent 15 minutes talking about all the buildup, and now I'm going to spend 35 seconds talking about the ghost.
Tune in for Beth's next podcast, History of Stories.
It's reported that Mary Ann still wanders the grounds. There is a young girl who is seen walking around, and she just appears to be looking for someone or something. And so there are reports that...
Probably her fiancé.
Exactly. That's she
so
is
sad.
Because he was taken away before she died, she's still there looking for him.
That's so sad.
I know, right?
I hate that.
Well, now we have John McNaughton, half-hung McNaughton. He's still there, too.
They can't find each other?
Apparently. So he loiters around the grounds. He just hangs out.
Oh my gosh.
People will be walking around and they'll see him sitting places. Or if you're very lucky, in the middle of the night, he will climb into bed with you.
Half-hung McNaughton climbing into bed with you? I don't know.
There are a lot of reports. The most recent owner of the property, his name was Colin Peck. He treated it like a bed and breakfast, that he would tell all the stories and the history of the house. And he was probably much better at it than I just was. But lots of people would stay there and have this story that in the middle of the night, as they're sleeping, they felt something get into bed with them. Obviously, there's no person there. You're pretty sure you notice a person is now next to you in bed. And Colin Peck said it even happened to him. As he was getting into bed one night, some figure got into bed with him and just laid there for a while. I don't know. I thought it was very interesting. And then the last part of it, this Colin Peck guy who had been operating the house for years and years, he was found dead one morning in the house under very mysterious circumstances. The speculation is that John McNaughton came back and finished the job with Colin Peck. So now there are new people who own the house. They're a private family and they won't let anybody come in.
Let's talk about something interesting. In that story, you have two ghosts trying to find each other, and they can't find each other.
Even though they're at the same place.
That breaks my heart. That's so sad. And there's a romance to that.
Mm-hmm.
Could that be what hell is? Could that be their version of hell? You just want to find this person, and you can't. And you just roam around for eternity.
What an interesting idea.
Yeah.
That would be terrible.
I know.
If I was looking for Sean everywhere and couldn't find him.
Yeah.
And then to find out we're basically circling around each other, around the outside of the house.
But you never find out.
And yeah.
You're just stuck looking for them.
Oh.
I know, that's so sad.
That is sad.
If you love someone, just tell them.
Love you, Shauno.
Maybe it's some kind of weird purgatory. I don't know.
So anyway, there are my two Ireland ghost stories from
What am I talking about? He killed her. That guy's a jerk.
Accidentally. He meant to kill her father and take all the
he
money.
was using her for money. So now this poor girl is stuck for eternity or until she decides to pass over, looking for this guy she's so in love with. He didn't even love her. He was just using her for the money.
This escalated so quickly.
Sorry, I was getting all bummed out, and then I really started thinking about it. And I'm like, no, this guy sucks. What a jerk. Don't try to use women for money. Ugh.
Tune in next week for Amelia Gets Angry. There's actually steam coming out of her ears right now.
I'm getting riled up.
Those are my two stories from Northern Ireland, from the UK, that I brought and wrote all the way for you.
Great. I really appreciate it. Those were good stories. I like the second one the best.
Because it made you sad and then it made you angry and...
There's a whole emotional roller coaster going on with that story.
You really didn't like the one about the dark hedges?
Yeah, I liked it.
I know, you wanted more ghosts, but I like more history behind the ghosts.
I know, but we're on a ghost podcast.
Well, I got to the ghosts.
Good stories, Beth.
Thanks. So what else we got?
We got a bunch of mail. We got...
I like mail.
Yeah, you got mail. We have emails. Oh, wait, that's the same thing.
I mean, unless a carrier pigeon really showed up here, but I kind of thought you were talking about that as a joke. But...
We have a new 5-star review we could talk about. We could give a little teaser to next week's episode.
Let's not do that because if it doesn't happen...
No, it's going to happen. We already recorded stuff for it. I got a lot of audio.
I think that the episode will be fine. I think that we get ourselves into trouble when we start talking about things that we haven't actually recorded yet. Because then next week you might be going I know we said we were gonna, but I always get ahead of myself. So I'm going to stop doing that. I believe those are your exact words.
Yeah. Okay, so I think next we should do 5-star reviews because we only got one this week, but it's a really good one. It makes me smile. This week's 5-star review is Wonderful Podcast from CDP Viola. I think that's it.
CDP Viola.
Yeah.
Could be Viola.
I think it's Viola because that's my mom's middle name.
Well, it used to be. She's fancy. She changed her name.
This is my 9-year-old daughter's favorite spooky podcast. We love to listen to episodes on the weekend during long rides. Happy huntings, Chrissy from NC. Thank you so much, Chrissy, and shout out to your 9-year-old daughter. We're so happy to have you as a fan.
I have to tell you, I do the same thing with my 9-year-old son. So we're not really into the podcast in the car, but I get the stories on Audible, and he really enjoys them. So I'm glad that we're not the only family that's bonding over shared listening in the car on long rides.
Yeah, spooky listening.
Thanks for writing in.
Thank you so much for leaving us a review. Again, shout out daughter. That's great. Is that our confirmed youngest listener so far?
I think it is.
If anyone else really young's listening, right on in.
We have a couple of drive-by ghostings. I mean, we didn't get any regular mail of hey, Amelia, here's a shirtless picture or anything, but we definitely have
I really don't want shirtless pictures. You keep trying to get people to send them to me. I don't want them.
Send Ghost Hunting in New England your shirtless pictures and I'll send them to Amelia.
Please don't. If you're a woman and you want to with some shared feminist bonding over body image, I'm totally down. But if you're a guy, please leave your shirt on. Please.
So we have 3 stories that we can read for you tonight. Amelia has apparently appointed me the official readers. We have a story from Charlie in Rhode Island. We have a story from Daniel in Australia. And we have a story from Mike in Arizona. Here we go. My name is Charlie, and this is my story. I was hired at Wheaton College as a steam fireman. Whenever you start at a new plant, you usually will work with the existing crew on all shifts until you know the plant well enough to be on your own.
Just so we're clear, Wheaton College, that's in Massachusetts, not Rhode Island, right?
Yep. It all started on third shift watch. I was being trained by a man named Russ. He asked me to go and take the temperature of all 4 oil tanks. These tanks were in the building in a series of 4 rooms, almost like catacombs. To access the rooms, you would walk up 5 stairs and go through a fireproof door. This was a very heavy steel door with a thick bar that would drop in place when you closed and secured the door. Whenever you went in, it was better to leave the door fully open in case you had to get out quickly. On this night, I took my equipment and went into the tank room. Russ was about 150 feet away in the pump room. No sooner than getting to the bottom of the steps, the door slammed shut with considerable force. Thinking Russ might be playing tricks on me, I rushed back up the stairs to see if he did it. I opened the door and called for him. He then walked out of the pump room and asked, "What's up?" I asked if he shut the door on me, and he said he was working on a pump. Later that night, while we were having a break, I asked him if anyone has ever seen anything unusual here. He said, "Listen, man, we don't like to talk about it here." And then he told me he saw a man standing at the other side of the boiler room once. He ran down to catch him, and there was no one there. Keep in mind that you always had the doors dead-bolted for security reasons, as college kids when they drink get curious and brave. When I was able to be on my own, I was assigned the overnight shift. One night, as I was sitting at my desk, I heard something behind me, and I turned to see what the noise was. We had a large welder on wheels, and it was moving slowly toward me. Then the gas bottle, which is about 4 feet tall and chained to the wall, fell to the ground. I watched as the chain dropped, and the chain is secured to the wall with a bolt. I calmly walked over and replaced and secured the gas bottle and put the welder back where it came from. But inside, I was terrified. I couldn't rationalize how this could happen. Now, while you're on duty, you have to take readings every hour. This would be when I'd catch glimpses of a man. He was always the same, dressed in green dicky work pants with a green plaid shirt and a hat. On one night, my clearest vision of him was when I was headed to the pump room. He went from the right side of the door to the left side and disappeared. Now understand this. The right side of the door is a wall with 2 tanks and various piping. I never got comfortable with my sightings, but it never really scared me either until one night. I was sitting at my desk doing my time card on the computer. We had a small fan on the desk, as boiler rooms tend to get very hot. This fan has been in the same spot for as long as I've been there. It suddenly started to move across the desk. It went until it fell off the side. Then the pencil holder fell on its side and rolled off the desk and across the floor. Again, I kept my composure and picked up the items and put them back where they belong. My heart was beating 100 miles an hour. I would relay this information to the supervisor when he came in to relieve me in the morning, and he would basically dismiss me and sometimes berate me. That was about the time I figured I should look for another job. I eventually moved on to bigger and better things. I really don't think he was a malevolent spirit, as he never did anything to hurt me. I just thought it might be a past employee that died and is stuck here for some reason. I hope to hear back from you sometime. Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie. Great story.
Yes, Charlie. Thank you.
That was spooky.
It was. I like stories that happen in basements with stuff falling. That's pretty frightening. I mean,
classic.
I don't want to be in that basement where stuff is falling, and that would be pretty frightening for me. But I like those stories from other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.
Have a look at this.
You know what that sound clip means?
We have another story from Daniel in Australia. Woo! Here we go. As a teen living in a small rural town in a house backing onto the bushland, my friends and I would walk all over the hills around the town. But certain parts gave us the chills. Often we couldn't put a reason in it, but other places we could. Alongside a rural road, there were 2 empty houses a couple of 100 meters apart. One, a 1940s home that had been empty for a couple of years, and the other was a vertical board shack come small house that had been empty for 15 years or more. Frequently, as teens are wont to do, we would enter the shack and look around the place. Often a couple of us would see the impression of a short, slightly stout old woman in a long, light-colored, simple dress and a dark apron. She sounds like me. We would all get a feeling of dread.
When do you wear aprons?
When I'm cooking, but I was more talking about the short, stout old woman.
You're not old.
I'm definitely short, stout, and not young.
No, you're beautiful.
We would get a feeling of dread when she appeared, even those who couldn't see her. She would stand there looking angry, hands clenched by her side. I believe she was angry that we were trespassing in her house. A few years ago, the house was pulled down and the timber used elsewhere. The only thing that remains is the floor slab, and every spring thousands of wild old-style daffodils where the old gardens used to be. The feeling of dread remains any time someone walks past the location, so I believe she is still there, watching over her little plot of land. The other house had a tragedy connected to it. Don't all haunted buildings? The story as to why it was empty is tainted, as rumor and friend of a friend's friend has convoluted the storyline. The closest thing to the truth is that the owners just got too old to maintain a farm on a steep block, so moved to a small house in the suburbs and sold the property. The more exciting story goes that they moved because of the mental anguish of losing a preschool-aged daughter, their only child, and the terror of her haunting their house. The haunting turned out to be true, but only started after the owners had retired and moved out. I heard a first-hand account from some older friends who experienced a haunting incident there on the anniversary of the child's death. The child's death has its own mystique associated with it. Allegedly, the parents went out for the evening and an uncle from just up the road babysat the child at the parents' home. When the parents returned, the uncle was asleep on the couch and the child was nowhere to be seen. Frantic searches were done, but she was never found, nor any sign of a body. My friends had heard stories once the house became empty that it was haunted, so the 3 boys decided to camp in the house overnight. To increase the chances of success, they slept in 3 separate rooms in what was essentially a 4.5-room house.
There's some brave boys.
Late at night, around 10, they all heard the screaming voice of a terrified young girl, screaming, "Mummy! Mummy! Help me! Mummy!" over and over again for about 5 minutes. During this time, the 3 boys were running from room to room, trying to work out where the voice was coming from. Each one swore that it always sounded like it came from the next room, even though one of the other boys was in the next room and also said it sounded like it came from another room. 2 of the boys were so shocked by the event that they ran like demons were on their tails, more like it, home through essentially pitch-black bushland back to our town, a distance of about 1.5 kilometers. The 3rd boy stayed behind but heard no further noises and slept soundly after midnight. The rumor is the uncle murdered the child and buried her on the property. I believe she's still buried there, even if it wasn't the uncle that killed her. At one spot on the property, I could always feel a coldness and felt like a small child was trying to cuddle my legs. I believe that she is buried at that spot in what is the only flat, deep-soiled area on the property. The house has changed hands a few times since being demolished, and the foundations were used to build a newer house. Word going around from the locals is that on the anniversary, the child's ghost comes back to call out to her mommy, reenacting the last moments of her life.
That's awful. I mean, it is a very well-written story, Daniel, and thank you for sending it to us, but that's tragic. My heart's broken.
You're having a lot of really tough moments tonight with our stories.
I know.
Do you want to get angry about this one?
No, I don't. I just want to feel really sad. That's awful.
Well, you can be mad about the uncle having possibly murdered her.
Mad that anyone did anything to this kid.
Yeah.
That I'm very mad about,
Okay.
but I mean, that's tragic.
I like his detail in here about ran like demons were on their tails, more like it.
Daniel is a fantastic writer.
He is.
I really enjoy all of his stories he sends us.
I would very much like, Daniel, if you would record one of your stories and send it, and we can...
So I have asked him for that.
Yes.
And his response has been that none of us would be able to understand his Australian accent.
I think that if he speaks slowly, we would be able to understand him.
I have trouble with accents. Even Dr. John sometimes, when he was in here, I had a little trouble.
Okay.
Because he has an accent.
I just ask people to repeat what they said. Sometimes I repeat what I think they said, and it's usually nothing close to what they said. I do it to be funny.
Do they laugh?
Sometimes. Well, thank you, Daniel. That was another terrific story.
Thank you, Daniel.
And we are working through your thesis of ghost stories that you sent us.
Indeed. And we're so excited because now we have another listener who did the same thing, sent us a bunch of stories. So here we go. Beth, let's hear this email.
All right. So this is from Mike. Heya.
Hey.
First, let me say thank you for an awesome podcast.
You are welcome.
I also find you through